Ridge for Broadway Beat. This week's guests are Jordan Baker, Marian, Seldes, and Myra Carter, the three stars of Edward Albee's critically acclaimed Three Tall Women, currently playing at Off-Broadway's Promenade Theater and directed by Lawrence Saccharo. Critical acclaim is not new to Mr. Albee. For Three Tall Women, he received his third Pulitzer Prize, the others for Seascape and A Delicate Balance. And of course he authored the Broadway hit, Tony Award-winning Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? His career began with off-Broadway productions of such works as The Zoo Story and The American Dream. Now, after an absence from a New York commercial theater of over a decade, Mr. Albee returns to his roots.
I've found over the 33 years I've been involved in the theater that, don't call it off-Broadway because that's a group of 7 overpriced theaters. It's just a duplicate of what's awful on Broadway. That the experimental theaters, the small theaters, have always generally had better plays. They dare more, the stakes are higher aesthetically and lower economically, so people take more chances and do better work. I've always felt more at home in the small theaters than in the large ones.
Because we spoke to Julie Harris, and a lot of the work she's doing now is primarily in the smaller theaters now.
Well, if you care something about the theater, you try to go where the good work is. And she likes to be in good plays, and that's why she works in small theaters.
In Three Tall Women, the characters are known simply as A, B, and C. Naming them this way is perhaps the only convention that links Mr. Albee to the theater of the absurd, a tradition with which he's often associated. In the first act, A, B, and C are 3 different characters. Myra Carter is A, the feisty matriarch, Marian Seldes is B, the loyal secretary, and Jordan Baker is C, the young lawyer. In the second act, A, B, and C represent 3 different stages in the life of the same woman. 3 stages, I might add, as different from one another as the 3 actresses who portray them.
What have I learned from them? Oh, God. Marian's lesson yesterday was that I shouldn't be afraid to know when people are coming to the show. That's one of the things. I told them I don't want to know when anybody's coming to the show. Last night we had the whole cast of Frasier come, and I'm sweating bullets. And she goes, no, you must know. You must learn how to, appreciate and sort of grow to love the audience. And I said, I do much better when I don't know. I give sort of a more real performance, because then I'm not focused as to who's watching. It's a general sort of mass appeal type of thing. It's much easier for me.
It's thrilling to be in a play that other people want to see. I have no regrets of any play I've been in. I've loved it all. But there are some that you don't have to ask people to say, please come and see this. It's they want to see it. And when they come back, they don't have to speak. You can see that the play has reached them in some way, and that they're going to think about it later and remember it. And that's what I always thought all theater would be. When I was Jordan's age, or Jordan's character's age, we mix up, what we are. I mean, I say in the play I'm 52. What a lie. I put my hand here. I said, I'm 52. Think so they won't say no. But when you start out and you decide this is what I'll do, be an actress in the theater, you dream that every play will be wonderful. Almost said important, but that isn't really what I mean. Wonderful. Make the audience go into a different time, a different place, a different happening, and maybe change them. I don't know. Books change people. Music changes people.
Oh, theater does.
And you see, you said the most beautiful thing. I think theater changes people.
I think the character that Marian Seldes plays has the wisdom of the play, and the character that Jordan plays has the irreverence. Certainly this political sneer of Mr. Albee. I have all the unraised consciousness of a bygone era.
I've never known any colored. Oh, well, help, yes. They had colored help at Pinehurst. Visited them there. But they knew their place. They were polite and well-behaved. None of these uppity niggers, those city ones Oh, he keeps telling me I can't say these things. I don't know what things he means. He said once he wouldn't come and see me anymore if I said those things. And I don't know what things he means. What did he mean? trouble yourself. Now your sister married an Italian. She did what?
So let's talk about the Vienna production that he directed. How different was that production?
It was a beginning. It wasn't a different production. We didn't have a script. We didn't have a second act.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wrote the second act in the Hilton while we were rehearsing the first. He saw me about 3 weeks before Vienna and gave me the first act, about a month before Vienna. And I read the first act, and it was about 15 minutes longer than the current, I think, probably 10 to 15 minutes longer than the current one. Very, very garbled. But nevertheless, the unmistakable Albee-esque, and I don't say that derogatively, I mean he's a recognized style, was there. Plus the fact it was the first script I had read or seen about very old age that wasn't all sentimental and dripping about putting her in a home or the relatives and all the rest of it. It was merciless. And I'm a radical feminist, so I was well aware of the sexism and the racism and the classism and all the other isms. I mean, it was a horror. But embedded in there were a lot of issues of old age, money, getting robbed blind when you have money and everybody's looking after you. Everything was extremely relevant and very modern. But the thing that I preferred about the play was really that he was into death his own way again. I did All Over, which was about people standing around somebody in a coma discussing things, which we now know affects the person in the coma, and he knew it. He read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross years ago, so his mind on death is modern. He is a modernist. I've always recognized that about him. That's what I like. He had only the first act, so I read it and found it this horrible woman. But nevertheless, it was Albee, and I detected embedded issues that were certainly major. But he had no second act, so he said to me that he thought of using, he had the last lines of the play, the I Deny You series of lines, but he hadn't written it. So I wasn't going to go to Vienna till it was written. Oh, it'll be written, he said. But it wasn't. We went without it written. He wrote it in the Hilton as we were rehearsing the first act, which had new material in and out of it every night. It was the most onerous learning job I've ever had. I hope never to repeat it. I never wanted to do the play twice. It's the only play I've ever dried up in. It was a preview, but I dried up. Nobody could get me out, not those on stage or off. It's a horror. I'm sorry for Maggie Smith, though she's got the short version. I did it, Maggie. We got it pruned.
I'm thinking of Edward's artistry as a playwright. Something extraordinary happens at the very end of the first act, and something equally extraordinary and surprising happens at the very beginning of the second act. And this is a kind of mental explosion that the major character has, in which she retreats from life and then sees her life in three parts: young, middle-aged, and old, she being herself the old one. And because she's been surrounded by this young lawyer that Jordan plays and this caregiver, helper, secretary, whatever you can say I am, our physical selves take on what she was, but we are she. We are part of the character Myra plays. It's hard to describe because Edward doesn't give us names. If you're describing Masha or Irina in a Chekhov play, you say that, and anyone who's read Chekhov. But if you say, but A and B and C, but this kind of generic labeling of the women, I think is another brilliant stroke, because then you're any woman of any age in any place. You don't have to be this rich woman or this rather bigoted woman. You're a woman. And you were young, and you were middle-aged, and now you're facing the end of your life. And I don't miss not having a name. That's such a funny thing to say, but who are we? We're women. We're his idea of a woman's life. And last night, someone, a young actress, a marvelous young girl who's in the cast of Frasier, Myra did a beautiful scene in Frasier, and then all these actors came back to see this performance she gives. And she said to me, please don't mind my saying this, but, and I sort of knew what she was going to say, and I said, there's nothing I could mind. Whatever this play evokes in you, I'd love to know. And she said, my grandmother. Well, she's in her 20s, this girl, and I'm the 52-year-old person. And I made her, and I looked at her and I thought, I know why you say that, because the shape of her face was the shape of my face. It was extraordinary. And I see in what Myra does, certainly my own grandmother, and my grandmother's friends, and older people I've studied and watched and looked at. And this girl, actress, said to me, how does Edward Albee know how to write women this way? And I said quickly, without thinking deeply at all, well, how does a painter know how to paint women? I think art is so far above the fact that there are 2 sexes, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 15 colors of skin, or 90 countries, or how many continents. It's so far beyond that. It reaches so far beyond that. And that's what Albee does. He reaches beyond this literally tiny situation. What is it? A woman. And it's about everything.
It's wonderfully put.
Isn't it? And also, what we're not saying is, I hope you agree with me, it's hysterically funny.